Oppression to redemption, speedily and very soon, and let us say Amen. Hamakom Yirachem, Yirachem Aleichem, Yotziem Mitzara, V'yiracha Yeshivu V'geula, V'yafela Leora, V'darkness to light, Yeshivu V'geula, Hashtas Bezman Kaviv, V'naomar, let us say Amen. Hi everyone, welcome to the second day of the Jewish week, to Monday afternoon here in the land of Israel, October 16th, the first day of the Hebrew month of Cheshvan, the head of the new month. This morning in our prayers, we said as part of the additional service which we say on the new month, we say that our prayers, which are in memory of the sacrifices, the special sacrifices were given in the temple in Jerusalem, on special sacrifices for the new month, we say it should be a kapara, it should be an atonement, and the hoshio meyad soneh, to redeem them from the hand of the enemy, or rather, the literal translation is the hand of the hater, of the soneh. It's a hard thing to understand that there's hatred. Hatred is a real thing, and it's important. Maybe we'll talk just a little bit about love and hatred and how hatred comes to be. Israel is facing, as it often does, especially in these days, terrible hatred on the part of those who hate us. The enemy now has a name, although it's not the only enemy, but the main focus is on the enemy called Hamas. And interestingly, that the Torah portion for this week, which is the second Torah portion of the year, since just the week before the Sabbath before last, we started the Torah again from the beginning, from Genesis, and now this Shabbos, coming Shabbos, this past Shabbos was the parsha of Genesis, and the next parsha is parsha Noach, of Noah, about Noah, the story of Noah, how a number of generations, 10 generations after God created the world, he felt the need to obliterate most of mankind. Let the pigeons loose. Did you see that? Felt the need to start over with Noah and his family, and it says because the Haaretz Malei Hamas, the world was filled with Hamas, which means violence in Hebrew. I don't know what Hamas means in Arabic. I don't know if it means jelly beans or something, but it's certainly significant that in Hebrew, Hamas means violence, which perhaps, it's like out of central casting. Like central casting, these people call themselves Hamas. The Nazis, what did the Nazis call themselves? They didn't call themselves violence, although they were violence. They were hatred. But they called themselves the National Socialists, right? They were just socialists. They were just good National Socialists. It was Churchill. It was Winston Churchill who gave them the nickname Nazis. It was sort of like a slur on their party name, the National Socialists. As if to say, Nazis. Snot is like that stuff, like mucus that comes out of your nose. But here, the enemy here he calls himself, without any subtlety, violence. It's like at essential casting. I think, what was it in Maxwell Smart? I think the enemy organization was called Chaos. When Maxwell Smart Gets Smart, it was an old TV show. Don't bother watching it. Or in Batman, what was the bad guy in Batman called? Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor, Luther, reminiscent of the devil, or Martin Luther, perhaps. And so here we're dealing with this hatred, and it's important to understand what's going on a little bit. As much as we can understand. We really can't understand, but as much as we can understand. And to do that, it's important to have a little historical perspective. One of the great rabbis of our generation, Rabbi Shlomo Aviner, may he be well, who has a yeshiva in the old city of Jerusalem called Ater Yerushalayim, the crown of Jerusalem. He has always said that all the wars that take place in Israel in our day, including all the terror attacks, they're all a continuation of the War of Independence in 1948 in 5708, when the State of Israel started. These are all a continuation, and that is in fact true, to our sorrow. It's important to remember what happened there to understand what's been going on since then and before then. People might not know. In 1947, November 29, 1947, which was some 7 or 8 months before the State of Israel was declared on May 15th, 1948. So at that time, the United Nations passed a resolution which was called for the dividing of Palestine. As you know, Palestine was ruled by various empires over the years since the Jews were driven out by the Romans and the Byzantines in the early centuries of the Common Era. And the last great empire to rule here was the Ottoman Empire from Constantinople, which ruled here for exactly 400 years, from 1517 to 1917. In 1917, as part of the World War I, Palestine was conquered from the Turks, the Ottomans, by the British. And after the war in 1922, the British mandate started the League of Nations, which was the predecessor of the United Nations, said that Palestine should be designated for a Jewish homeland, but they reserved the right to take off part of that and make it into anything else they wanted, which they did in 1922, I believe. They said that 70% of the original Palestine would be the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, would be an Arab state ruled by the Hashemites, which is across the way. I can see it from here where I'm sitting in Tekoa, a beautiful scenic Tekoa in south of Jerusalem in the Judean desert. And the 30% that's closer to the Mediterranean would be the Jewish homeland. And the British were in charge of overseeing this nation-building attempt, which is supposed to culminate in a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And that didn't work out. The British had second thoughts. They figured, no, it's better just to keep it like a little colony. And I'm not going to go through all the history. You can read in the history books. But after World War II, the Jews were very anxious to indeed have a country. And they encouraged the British to leave. And as part of and the Arabs who were living in Palestine during this time, who had never had a state here before, when the Jews started pushing for their own state throughout the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, they also got the idea that, wow, why should there be a Jewish state here? Why not have another Arab state here? And they started pushing for a Palestinian state, an Arab state here in Palestine, which the neighbors weren't too happy about, meaning the Egyptians and the Syrians and the Saudi Arabians and all the rest. They weren't particularly anxious to have a state here, but they wanted to have it as part of their kingdom. So as a proposed solution, the UN proposed a partition plan whereby parts of Palestine would be Jewish and parts of them would be an Arab state. And the local Arabs rejected it. The leaders, the Jewish leaders accepted it foolishly, not all of them, but the central leaders accepted the plan, which was proposed on the 29th of November 1947, the partition plan. And at that point started basically the war. Even though the War of Independence didn't start till 8 months later, but at that point the Arabs started attacking the Jews in Palestine, like they're doing now. That's where evidence says all the wars in Palestine are really, in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, are all a continuation of the War of Independence. And in that 7-month period, they killed over 700 Jews here in Palestine, which was less than what was killed now, unfortunately, in the past 10 days, to our great sorrow. By the way, it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. Our rabbi and friend, Rabbi Yaakov Arshevsky, you can see his wonderful videos in Hebrew to strengthen people at these times. He says it's okay to cry, it's good to cry. It's natural and it's appropriate to cry what's gone on in the past 10 days here. So over 700 Jews were killed in attacks on roads and in towns. And that was just the local Arabs. And then when the Jews declared independence on May 15th, 1948, which was the 5th of Iyar, 5,708 in the Jewish calendar. So then the surrounding Arab nations also attacked. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, our friends across the way of the Dead Sea there, the Egyptians, Syrians, the Iraqis, even though they didn't border, they sent people from Iraq, friends of the Iraqis. Some people came up from Sudan even. Came from all over. And then for over a year there was the War of Independence. Over 6,000 Jews fell in the War of Independence. Out of a population at the beginning of the war of some 600,000 Jews, meaning over 1% of the population fell in the war. And at that time, these neighboring Arab countries, they told the inhabitants, the local Arab inhabitants, to say, look, you should all flee from your homes temporarily, because we're going to come and we're going to wipe out the Jews, we're going to rape them and kill them and throw them into the sea. And then you can come back and it'll be safe, but get out of the way in the meantime. And then we'll take care of them. You'll come back. You can take over their homes. It'll be great. Well, it didn't work out the way they planned. Thank God. The Jews were not thrown into the sea. And a lot of these Arabs who had fled ended up in other countries. And some of them ended up outside the borders of Israel. For example, classic example, the Gaza Strip. What's the Gaza Strip? The Gaza Strip is a relatively small area of land between Egypt and Israel along the Mediterranean coast. That's what they call it, like a strip. It's like a strip of land along the coast. And many, I don't remember exactly how many, a few 100,000, maybe 100,000, 150,000, I don't remember exactly how many. You can look it up in the books. They ended up in the Gaza Strip. And they stayed there. Why? Because no one wanted to take them in. The Egyptians didn't want to take them in. And the Jordanians didn't want to take them in. Many also ended up in Jordan and just crossed the border. The majority of Jordan is Palestinian, 70% Palestinian. And they just kept them there, and they didn't want to help them. Why? Because they wanted to be like a thorn in the side of Israel, to say, oh, look, Israel, it created all these refugee problems, so we're not going to take in the refugees, we're going to keep the refugees. And that's what's happened. They kept them in refugee camps until today. It's the only ethnic group in the world which the UN renews their refugee status year after year. Over 75 years later, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of these original refugees are still, when they're born, they're being registered as refugees, which is not like that in any other refugee situation in the world. And they're there. Now, in 1967, Israel took over a lot of the lands which their neighboring countries had captured from them in 1948, namely the Yehuda and Shomron, where I'm sitting now here in Judean Desert, which was part of Jordan for 19 years, from 1948 to 1967, and the Gaza Strip, and the whole Sinai Peninsula, which had been in Egyptian hands. The Gaza Strip had also been in Egyptian hands, and the Golan Heights in the north, which had been in Syrian hands. All these areas were captured, thank God, the help of God, in 1967 by Israeli forces. So from 1967 on, Israel was administering the Gaza Strip, just like the Egyptians administered the Gaza Strip. Now things come together a little more complicated. This is also where we can blame ourselves more for what happened now, a little bit. Not blame ourselves, but take some responsibility. When things go wrong, you have to not just blame others, but you have to say, well, where am I responsible? Because if you don't take care of yourself properly, that's sort of being responsible. If you don't brush your teeth and you get cavities, you have to take some responsibility. If you smoke and you get sick because you smoked your whole life, if the shoe fits, wear it. So in 1993, my friends, Israel made a terrible mistake, which we're still paying the price for 30 years later. What was that mistake? The Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, Foreign Minister Shimon Peres, were elected in 1992. And they said, let's try something new. Shimon Peres, who was a bright guy in a certain way, but in a certain way, a very foolish. He wrote a book published in '93 called The New Middle East. I still have an old copy of it. I'm looking at it recently. And he said like this there. He said, yes, it's true that it's the Arabs' fault that the refugees have been in Gaza and places in Lebanon for 50 years. Then it was like 48 years, whatever it was. 46 years, whatever it was. But what does it help anything? It's their fault. We have to try to solve this problem. So he had this idea like this. He said, first of all, he was advocating like a regional system. He said like countries aren't important anymore. What's important is regional systems. Like he thought that just like they had the EU, the European Union in Europe, he felt we need something like that in the Middle East. We need a regional security system, regional system. And he was kind of on this, and he said, what we need to do is to set up some sort of confederation between Jordan. That was his idea. He thought the Jordanians were like this. Turned out they weren't. The King Hussein was not at all enthused about this. And he didn't do it at all. But he thought that the Jordanians and a Palestinian authority, which he would create in parts of Israel, they could govern those parts of Israel, and then everyone would be a big happy confederation working together with cooperation and peace to make everything nice and make lots of money of business. That was his vision. You can read the book there. It's called The New Middle East by Shimon Peres. And indeed, in September 13th of 1993, on the White House lawn, a wise and inspired president by the name of Bill Clinton and Prime Minister and Yasser Arafat, may his name be erased, disgusting murderer, terrorist leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, signed what was known as the Declaration of Principles, or colloquially known as Oslo I, which said that the Arabs in the territories conquered by Israel in 1967, namely Judea and Samaria, not in the Golan Heights, that was something else, that was Syria. They were trying also to make a peace treaty with Syria. Fortunately, Assad kept saying no until he died, which saved us from giving away the Golan, which went really bad when the next decade they had a civil war there for 10 years, as we know. But in Judea and Samaria, at least, so they were going to make a Palestinian authority. Sorry about the wind here, or Baruch Hashem, thank goodness for the wind, but I'm sorry if it makes the recording a little hard. So, what they say in the Oslo I Accords, and as they developed over the coming 2 years, Oslo II was in 95, and in October 1995, 28 years ago. They said Gaza and Jericho first. That was the plan. Let's first give sovereignty and control, local control, civilian matters to the Palestinian Authority in the cities of Jericho, which is down by the Dead Sea. You can see it at night from here where I'm sitting, and in Gaza, in Gaza. Gaza and Jericho first. That was the plan. So that's what happened. Already in 1994. Gaza and Jericho transferred to Palestinian Authority control, which means the army is no longer taking control there. The army stayed outside them, but not inside them, and the civilian control was totally in the hands of the local population, which at that point started off with the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, hereby renamed the Palestinian Authority. They had one election. They always have one election, and they wait 20 years for the next election. But they had one election. They elected the PLO, and that's how it began. Now, to the chagrin of the Israelis, although not to the surprise of many of us, it didn't really work out. Peace didn't break out somehow. In fact, terrorism increased like threefold, fourfold. But Israel was still in Gaza maintaining the control outside. They had patrols, army patrols going around there, and in fact also surrounding Gaza, in the immediate environs of Gaza, in the Gaza Strip itself, south of Gaza City and elsewhere, there were Israeli settlements, Israeli agricultural settlements, residential settlements, where Jews and Israelis were living. And that maintained the situation until I'm trying to remember the exact dates. Yes, in 2005, I believe. In 2005, they had a little civil war in Gaza, if you could call it that, or a coup, or whatever you want to call it. People threw people off buildings, etc. And Hamas takes over control of the Gaza Strip. I mean, the Palestinian Authority was supposedly moderate, so-called moderate Arab Palestinians. They're replaced by Hamas, which is essentially a religious fundamentalist group. Now, and later they were elected. Also, they had elections, and Hamas was actually elected. I forget which the election was, but there was an election. Actually, Hamas won the election too. I don't know if it was after or before they threw out the PLO, but they actually had some election where the Hamas won. It's not like, they're just like, the Nazis also won an election. But in any case, in 2005, Hamas takes over Gaza. In 2007, I think they start their first war, the first time they start shooting at Israel. Correct. I should have checked my dates. Anyway, you can look it up on Wikipedia or some other unreliable source of information. But in 2007 is the first war. Now, I forgot to tell you a significant thing. In 2005, that's right, yes. In 2005, Israel withdrew all its citizens. It was like 10,000 citizens who were living in those communities surrounding Gaza. Okay, the majority of the Israeli Knesset, including our current Prime Minister, wasn't Prime Minister, he was a minister, and the government of Ariel Sharon was the Prime Minister, and they voted to disengage, as they euphemistically call it, to disengage from Gaza, and it actually uprooted the army, took out all the Jewish citizens from those towns. All the greenhouses were there. You think the Arabs would come in and take over the greenhouses and grow something? No, they just came in and burnt it all. And all the Gaza Strip came under Hamas PLO control. PLO control in 2005. I'm sorry, I'm getting my dates wrong. Before I said 2005, Hamas, no. In 2005, Israel disengaged from the entire Gaza Strip, and took its army from its army patrols in the Philadelphia line. It's called the Philadelphia line, the line that went by the, I hope this phone doesn't fall down in the wind. Maybe I should put a rock up here or something. That's better. Maybe it improves the acoustics too. So they removed all the army patrols from the outskirts of Gaza, and the entire Gaza Strip was under Palestinian Authority control. And in 2007, that's it, 2007, mark that down. 2007, That's when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, okay, and the PA was out of there. And the PA, until today, unfortunately, has civilian control in Yehuda and Shomron, in Judea and Samaria, where there are Jewish towns, in the Arab towns. So now, in 2007, the Hamas takes over, and since then we've had this, I think, the fifth war. This is the fifth war since 2007, now it's 2023, that Hamas has started with Israel, meaning shooting thousands of rockets at us, etc. One of those early wars, I don't know when it was 2009, 2010, something like that, 11. One of the first times they came across the border, they attacked the tank. At least one tank, they captured, they killed the soldiers in the tank. They took one of the soldiers that wasn't killed, Gilad Shalit, they took him captive back into Gaza. They ended up holding him there for 5 years. It's a real disgrace that he was allowed to be in captivity for 5 years there. Heaven help us. And at the end, it was also Prime Minister Netanyahu, the current Prime Minister. He was Prime Minister after 5 years then, and he made a deal, not just him. When we take responsibility. I mean, if our leaders do something stupid, it's all of us. My Rosh Hashiva, Rav Dov Bigun from Mechon Meir, he said back then, 20 years ago, during the disengagement when Sharon was pulling out of Gaza, he said, look, the government is us. The government is us, the people. If the leaders are doing it, we're all doing it. It's not just them. We in some way are letting them do it. So take responsibility. I'm not just saying it's just Netanyahu, but at that time the government made a deal with Hamas, a prisoner swap. They got back actually. They gave them like 1,200 terrorists who were in jails. Many of those were ones now that just led this war against us, this incursion into our towns to massacre us. Many of them were among those that were released then. So I mean, at the time, now they're bombing all these buildings. I remember at the time they're bombing empty buildings. We bomb empty buildings. We don't, bomb full buildings. That might actually deter someone. But I said, we have these planes. Why? Just say, if you don't give us Gilad Shalit, we're going to destroy this first row of houses, buildings in Gaza. And if they don't give them, then say we're going to do the second row. And if you do kill them, we're just going to destroy, half the city, all the city, just, whatever. You can tell the civilians to get out first. In any case, we didn't do it then, and if we paid a heavy price, and we're paying a heavy price now. Now we're bombing the buildings. Now we're bombing the buildings. Now that they killed 1,300 of our brothers and sisters, and have over 100 of our brothers and sisters in captivity. Hashem help us. Now we're bombing buildings, but we didn't do it then. And every time it was just like, it's like, what I like to share with you was something that I heard many years ago, like the first time this happened, like not the fifth time, the first time, from a very wonderful rabbi who now has passed away of our generation, Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein. May the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. May his merit protect us. He was the Rosh Hashiva, the head of the yeshiva here in Alon Shvut, here Yeshivat Har Etzion in Gush Etzion, in the Etzion block. And he said this, he said a simple thing. He said, what we're doing is ridiculous, pinpointing strikes against Hamas leaders and whatnot. I mean, forget about the fact, or remember the fact that, this is an elected government. It's like the Nazis bombing London. This is Hamas bombing Israel as an elected government. I'm sure not everyone supports them, but nevertheless, it's the government. And he said, if they indiscriminately rocket Israeli cities, the correct response is to indiscriminately rocket their city. But we've never done that. We play these games of pinpoint strikes against terrorist leaders, etc. So, the people don't worry. The people aren't worried. Even now they're not worried. Even now the people worried. No. We say, excuse us, we'd like to bomb your building. Can you kindly evacuate your building? That's not a very intelligent way to wage war. If you want to create deterrence. What else do you have besides deterrence? What else do I want to share with you, my friends? I want to share with you that we need a lot of help. We need people to increase merit by prayers, saying Psalms. The Psalms, the book of Psalms, 150 chapters of the book of Psalms. Each one is like a personal prayer. You could take it, you recite it, and it's like a prayer to God for help in these times. We have to keep ourselves mentally healthy. We have to help one another. We have to not get snappy with one another. It's most, Rav Yaakov Arsheshi says it's the most natural thing to give gifts to the poor, so to speak. That's the phrase from Purim. You give gifts to the poor. He says we're all poor now. We all need support and everything. We all need emotional support. But we end up giving gifts to the poor. We take out aggression on the people close to us because we're under pressure. We're under anxiety. We have to be careful not to do that, but to maintain our center, maintain our center, as he says, maintain our center and keep things balanced, not to give into depression. That's what depression wants us to give into it. No, we're not going to let it give into depression, not going to give into the fears and the fears and the doubts. We're gonna keep ourselves strong, to keep ourselves in our center. Remember to give charity, to give tzedakah, to your local synagogue, your local Jewish school, and other good causes. To try to say a psalm, at least one psalm every day. To give a little tzedakah every day. Pray for our soldiers, pray for our civilians, to pray for our captives. And give wisdom, give a lot of wisdom. They need a lot of wisdom. They need a lot of wisdom before. They need wisdom even more now, or all the more so now. They give a lot of wisdom to the leaders to know what's priority and how to do things with wisdom and seichel, wisdom and insight. How to get the captives back, first of all, and how to deal with the situation. Not that it's just going to keep coming back. That's what's failed. This whole policy, all the past governments, the past 15 years have failed, saying, "Well, we'll buy quiet for a little while. We'll buy quiet for a little while." No, it's not. If you give her the terrorist leaders today, their 10-year-old sons are going to grow up, and in 10 years they'll be attacking again. You have to think more long term. More tipol shorash, more dealing with the problem at its root. My personal belief is that Israel should be in control of Gaza again. My wife is from Sweden. She listens to Swedish journalists and whatnot. And she told me there was a Swedish journalist who started going to Gaza years ago. Before the Palestinian Authority, before all that, and she has friends there, which she visits occasionally, and she visited during different times and throughout the past decades. And this family who doesn't like Israel, we'll talk about in a minute. We'll a little bit about the idea of hate. But this family who doesn't like Israel, they told her nevertheless. They said that the best times when it was here in Gaza is when the Israelis were in control. Because that's it. Another thing my wife told me I want to share with you. She says she can understand why the Palestinians there in Gaza voted for Hamas when they did. And that is because the Palestinian Authority, which Israel helped create, they were totally corrupt. They were putting all the money in their own pockets. And Hamas, besides having an agenda to kill Jews, they actually are a Muslim fundamentalist charity organization, so to speak. They help the poor, they help the Muslims there. They give them food and stuff with the money they get from Qatar or wherever they get it. and but besides buying weapons, they also buy some food for the people, and they and they relate to them. They relate to them as fellow religious people, etc. So she's not surprised that people vote for Hamas. So you can understand that too. So again, this goes back. We have to take responsibility ourselves. We helped create this monster called the Palestinian Authority, which led to Hamas taking over. When Shimon Peres, when they were trying to sell to the Israeli public this whole Oslo thing. I remember I was here. I came here in 1994, and I remember he said if people said, "Oh, Hamas is going to take over," you know what's going to happen if you set up a Palestinian Authority in Gaza? The Hamas is going to take over there, and then we're going to have a terrorist state on our southern border. He said, if Hamas takes over the Gaza Strip, which is not going to happen, but if that would happen, then Sahal, then the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, will recapture it in 5 minutes. Okay, that was 30 years ago. Okay, it didn't happen that way, unfortunately. But those people living in Gaza said that the time it was best here in Gaza was when the Israelis were in control. And of course that was the best, because the Israelis are decent, honest people who let people live their lives. They don't bother us, we don't bother them. Of course that was the best time. And Halavai was the best time. I like to see Jews living in Gaza again. Jews lived in Gaza for centuries. Rabbi Israel Najjar, who wrote one of our famous songs that we sing on Shabbat, he was the rabbi in Gaza 400 years ago. So Gaza is a traditional Jewish community, and I pray that it will be again someday. And certainly all the areas around it, like the Yeshuvim, the settlements which were uprooted there in 2005 by the Israeli government. So why do they hate? Let's talk about that. Let's get to this issue. What about hate? This doesn't apply just to Jews, it applies to anyone. Jew hatred is a symbol sickness. A type of mental illness, a symbol sickness. The Jew becomes a symbol of everything that you hate. And usually it's what you hate in yourself. Usually it's because you hate yourself in a certain way. People that are dead inside, that don't have feelings, they project all this onto the Jew. All their self-hatred they project onto the Jew. In the case of the Arabs in Gaza, it's hard for them to admit that all their fellow Arabs have caused their problem. First of all, caused them to flee Palestine during the war, and then for not letting them into their countries like every other country let people in. But the Arabs didn't bring in their own brethren. It's hard for them to do that, but it's easy to blame the Jew, especially because their religion also encourages that. The religion encourages. The founder of the religion, Muhammad, was a lunatic who hated Jews and killed mass. He started the pattern of massacring Jews. So it's a very easy symbol to latch on to. Also, people have doubts about their own competence, their own masculinity, gender identification. By killing and raping, it gives them like a sense of masculinity. It affirms their masculinity and their Arabness and all these other things which they really feel negative about. They really have inside themselves. They have negativity toward themselves. Well, it's a complex thing. You can't say in 5 minutes, but an excellent book on Jew hatred is Anti-Semitism, a Disease of the Mind by Dr. Theodore I. Rubin. I have a copy of the book. It's an excellent book if you want to understand a very deep psychological thing about Jew hatred. Anti-Semitism was a book made up by a Jew. Anti-Semitism was a term made up by a German Jew hater, because he didn't want to say Jew hatred. It doesn't sound nice, but basically it's Jew hatred. It's Sinat Israel. It's hatred of Israel, of the Jewish people. What else? We need a lot of help. We need a lot of prayers. All the brothers and sisters and our friends around the world, please pray for Israel. Please give tzedakah, give to charity, local charities, in the merit of our captives and our wounded, and our soldiers on the front lines. Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanitunim tzara, tzara v'shivya, bein bayam v'yavasha. Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanitunim tzara, tzara v'shivya, bein bayam v'yavasha. Hamakom yirachem aleihem v'yotzihem mitzara l'iracham v'shivun afeila leora shivun deguna hashta gagala uzman kaviv. Hamakom yirachem aleihem v'yotzihem mitzara l'iracham afeila leora shivun deguna hashta gagala.